Welcome to our 2025 Lunch and Learn webinar series. We're excited to have our guests from the Pennsylvania Department of Health here today. I'm Chris Luco, Director of Member Engagement for the Pennsylvania Municipal League. Part of my role here is putting together opportunities to educate and engage with our membership. So I'm glad that you're here. Feel free to ask questions at the end. You're also encouraged to share the video once you receive the link to that with your other staff and key personnel in your municipality so that they're all aware of this tool. Today we're being presented this information by Dr. Stephanie Hassanali and Nate Miller from the Pennsylvania Department of Health. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to them. And again, I appreciate everyone being here and showing interest in engaging with the Municipal League.
All right. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you to Susan Wood for the invitation to present to you all today. As he said, I'm Stephanie Hassanali, and I'm the Public Health Program Director for our Division of Environmental Health Epidemiology at the Pennsylvania Department of Health, and I'm joined by my colleague Nathan Miller, who is an epidemiology program specialist and has a background in municipal government. So I'm sure he'll be happy to talk more about that in his time. But I am going to give a brief background on sort of the underpinnings of this map, and then he will give a longer demo. All right, so we received funding from CDC in 2020. It's called Environmental Health Capacity, and the program was really meant to give a small amount of money to have a large impact. And so we used that money to create this environmental health indicators map. We found that with working with our partners, that environmental health data was really scattered across state and federal agencies. And so it was a good opportunity for us to pull that data together into one place. So our objective in creating the map was to create a publicly accessible environmental health map of environmental health hazards, demographics of Pennsylvania locations, and health indicators of those residents. We had a few priorities when we were creating the map. We wanted the map, oh, sorry, go ahead. Vicki? Okay, are people having trouble seeing it? Oh. Okay, can everyone else hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I can see and hear.
Okay, it looks like some people are having some trouble. All right, well, I'll keep going, but.
Yeah, I can't see a display.
Bailey, did you want to try to do anything on your end, or should we just keep going?
Detail, that's what I want to do.
Okay. All right, I'll just keep going. We're happy to share these slides afterwards. So we had a number of priorities when we were creating this map. We wanted the map to be easy to use. Not everyone is familiar with ArcGIS, which is the program we used, but most people have familiarity with Google Maps. We wanted to make sure the map was well documented, so we have a technical guidance document that goes along with the map and explains all of the data sources. We also have a map tools document that explains the different features and tools that are available in the map. We wanted the map to be comprehensive of environmental health in general, so air, water, etc. And we wanted it to be complementary of other mapping projects that were happening in Pennsylvania. So I'll describe a few of those, but there's been a lot of work in this field around geospatial data and making maps. And then we also wanted to protect confidential information. So we do have hospitalization data and some other data sets that are not publicly available, but we display them at the county level to ensure that people's, private health data is protected. Okay, so we built the map in ArcGIS Online. It is a web application. We have Google Analytics enabled, so we can see how many people are visiting the map. I should have gotten the most updated numbers, but we've had, since the map launched in May of 2022, so it's been about 3 years, we've had pretty consistent engagement throughout. I don't have the exact numbers, but it's been really good. And Nathan and I have done a lot of these presentations. Currently, we have 61 layers in the map. So that means 61 indicators or 61 different data sets. And we are planning on adding more later this year. And then the primary geographic unit for the aggregate level data is the census tract. A census tract has around 4,000 people in it. And then nearly all of the data sets, as I mentioned, are publicly available. So I wanted to describe a few example use cases, and Nathan is going to go into this more during his portion. But we have used this map for a number of different reasons. We've also heard of other people, such as the state police, using it for reasons of their own. There was an escapee that the police ended up using this map to track where he may have been going. So it's been used widely. We used it during the East Palestine train derailment. We looked at rail lines, public water systems, and small watersheds to identify potentially affected waterways and private water sources. So most of the people who lived near the train derailment were on private water, and that is, as you all know, I'm sure, unregulated. And then we've also used the map to identify early care and education facilities, which is kind of the new term for daycare centers, in flood hazard areas to prioritize outreach and preparedness activities. We've also sent some guidance to them on various topics using the map to identify where the most affected facilities may be. And then we've also used the map to identify school districts with poor air quality so that we can survey students to better understand asthma triggers and the real prevalence of asthma among children. So as I mentioned, there's been a few other ongoing mapping projects. The biggest one for Pennsylvania right now is the PennEnviroscreen. That is DEP's, Department of Environmental Protection's tool. They released this, I believe, last year. And it is putting together a lot of the same data sets that we have, but it's creating a score. And so the score is indicative of vulnerability in a broad sense. And so areas with a higher percentile or a higher PennEnviroscreen score may be more vulnerable to environmental hazards. So some of the indicators they use are similar to ours in terms of poverty, education, location close to hazardous sites, etc. And then I just wanted to highlight another one from FEMA, the National Risk Index, one of the government sites that has not been taken down. And this shows hazards related to natural disasters. So the expenses that are potential are the potential damage and expenses related to wildfires, flooding, etc. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nathan, and he is going to provide the demo. But this is just a quick screenshot of what the map looks like, and we're happy to share our contact information in the chat too. But we have our website for environmental health at DOH and our email address as well here. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Thanks, Stephanie. I'm just going to share my screen quick. And if you can let me know when you're able to see that.
It's
Everybody
good.
see that? All right, and I am going to, my name is Nathan Miller. I'm an epidemiology program specialist here within the Division of Environmental Health Epidemiology. And as I go into the demo here, I'm going to turn my camera off so that I can preserve bandwidth. So I just wanted to have it on for a second to say hello, and we'll get the demo rolling. All right. So again, thanks, Stephanie, for your great introduction. And I'd just like to note that the realization and success of this indicator map wouldn't have been possible without the dedication and leadership of Stephanie, as well as our division director, Anil Nair. And so what you're looking at here is our environmental health capacity webpage, specifically our environmental health indicators map page under that, our environmental health capacity grant subpage. And I provided a link to this in our map or in the chat, and you'll see that this is where you can find and access the map, as well as both our technical guidance document and our map tool documents. And so when you initially open the environmental health indicators map, this is the disclaimer that will automatically appear. Users must read and agree to these terms and conditions before continuing to the map. And if you've been in the map before, you'll see this little black box. You just can close that out. And so the indicator list here is available here on the left-hand panel. And it's where you're able to turn on and off various indicators of interest. And so this layer is our air toxics cancer risk layer from EJ screen data. And you're also able to expand each layer to view its associated symbology. As Stephanie mentioned, excuse me, the indicator list includes 61 layers in total, which fall under 13 categories. And scrolling down through here, here's the bottom, so there's quite a few layers in here. And the categories we reference are visible within the About tool. So if you scroll down within this tool, you can see them listed here. These are the different categories of data sets that we have included. And the About tool provides an overview of our project and matches the executive summary section from our technical guidance document. All right, now before I begin demoing the advanced tools, which are over here in the upper right-hand corner, that we have built into this app, and as well as demoing an emergency response use case, I'd like to highlight a few layers that we think may be important for your local municipal work, as well as to inform you of some changes that are important between this version of our EHI map and the updated version that we hope to be available to the public later this year. So first, we'll scroll to the very bottom, and we call these our governmental boundaries indicators. And so as you can see, when you first come into the map, the Pennsylvania counties are automatically turned on and labeled for locational reference. We also have Pennsylvania municipalities. And since so many things in the Commonwealth are regulated and administered on the local municipal level, which I'm sure you're very aware of, this boundary is important to see which locality indicators fall within. And now each of you may be, day in and day out drilling down in your own municipality. For us at the state, when we get complaints or concerns, it's important for us to figure out which jurisdiction is this actually in. So this is very helpful for that. In our updated version, we will also, in addition to the municipalities and the counties and census tracts, we will also have zip codes and school districts available as indicators. And these may be helpful for you when trying to drill down a little further within your communities into deeper geographical units. The next I'd like to cover environmental justice boundaries. And so the EJ areas indicator we have in our current map is right here. It's environmental justice areas, or EJ areas for short. And this layer that you're seeing here is based upon the last definition used by the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection prior to switching to their PA EnviroScreen framework, which Stephanie gave a brief overview of. And this definition used is based on the percent population in the census tract that is non-white, as well as the percent population that is living below the poverty line to determine EJ areas. And you can see that demonstrated here. If you click, you're able to see those two data points. So in our updated version, again, which we hope to have available later this year, the EJ areas indicator will match the Penn Enviro screen. So I actually have their web page open, and this is what that looks like. These darkest areas, darker blues, are considered EJ areas. And so the DEP framework calculates undue environmental burden on vulnerable communities by combining pollution burden as well as population characteristics data in order to characterize these EJ areas. So we'll go back to our map. And now something else that might be important to you that we want to highlight is lead risk indicators. So I'm going to scroll up here to our American Community Survey data section, and we're going to look for the old housing lead paint proxy. And so we're using this data from the American Community Survey based upon the years homes were built to try to get at where there might be lead risk. And so you can see across the state what this looks like. I'm going to zoom in here to the capital region. And this indicator displays the percent of houses built before 1960, but data on the total number of households built before 1960 is also available. So there's a number, and then there's percent, and then you can also see data on houses built before 1980. The highest risk will be in homes before 1960, but it wasn't until the 80s when a lot of lead products were removed from construction. So this layer is currently available in this version of the map. This will also be available in our new version. But what something we'll be adding is a layer that we call our childhood blood lead levels by municipality. So to demonstrate this, I actually have some images out of what will be our new version. And you can see here, this is a statewide image of childhood blood lead levels under age 2 by municipality. And you can see a lot of gray in these municipalities, and this is where we've suppressed the data due to low testing counts to hide the identities of individuals. And if I go to the next image example, you can see kind of zoomed in a little bit. Here's Harrisburg, Dauphin County, Lancaster, Berks County, and you can see I've clicked on Reading. So this is City of Reading, and you're able to see the number of children tested that had a confirmed elevated blood lead level, and then what percentage that comes out to, and that the City of Reading would be in our highest quartile, so highest risk for lead exposure to children. And so that's something you can expect in our newest version. We'll come back to our map here. And lastly, something that would be, I think, I'm sure you're all very familiar with, that will be helpful for you, is we have FEMA flood hazard areas included in our map. I'm going to stay zoomed in and not zoom out to the state level because this is a very large data set and can really slow down processing. But as you can see, you can expand here, see the symbology. And so the 1% annual chance of flood, this is actually what most people would refer to as the 100-year flood. And the 0.2% annual chance is actually what is commonly referred to as the 500-year flood. And then obviously we have the regulatory floodway, which is in blue here for the Susquehanna. So this indicator shows areas within the PA that are identified by FEMA as special flood hazard areas as a part of their National Flood Insurance Program. And as I'm sure many of you know, some of you might even be floodplain administrators. Special flood hazard areas have regulations that include the mandatory purchase of flood insurance. You may also want to look at this during extreme weather events to see where areas in your municipality that would be at high highest risk if you wanted to send out notifications. So there's a lot, you can use this layer for. All right, so that was just a little bit deeper dive on some of the layers that we aren't necessarily going to touch on in the demos, but we wanted to give you highlight for you. But now we're going to move into our 3 demos, and first off, I'd like to show our emergency response use case incorporating the measurement tool. And so this use case demonstrates how our map can be useful for DOH staff, first responders, local community officials, and concerned members of the public in the event of environmental emergencies. And so the use case we're going to go over, Stephanie mentioned it earlier, is the East Palestine train derailment. And to demonstrate this, to show how the tool works, I'm going to turn on a few layers. So we're going to turn on public water supplier service areas. This is a data set from DEP. We're also going to turn on small watersheds. This is from the Geological Survey. And we will turn on the rail lines from PennDOT, and we'll also turn on Pennsylvania municipalities. And so now that these are turned on, I'm going to switch to legend view. So this little icon here will get you over, so the layers you have selected, you can see their symbology more clearly. And now I will search for the coordinates of the train derailment. So I'm actually going to paste it here in this box. So this is the actual coordinate of the actual derailment, as close as we could get. I'll close that out so that dot will stay there, and we'll zoom out a little bit to see the area surrounding that. And again, this is Ohio. This is right on the state line. We can see here, this is the rail line mapped by traffic density. So that's a very highly traveled rail line. And we can see there are 2 municipalities here, Little Beaver, Darlington Township. And then if I click over here, we can see that this watershed is Leslie Bull Run Creek. A watershed that's more in Pennsylvania that could be impacted is the Dilworth Run North Fork Little Beaver Creek watershed. And we can also see immediately here that you can see how far this is a public water supplier. So we immediately know that there are no public water supplies here. So everyone here is in Pennsylvania is likely on well water. And so I'm going to turn on the measurement tool. And this tool you can measure by area, you can measure by distance, and you can also measure specific, if you want to use feet or yards. In this example, we're going to use miles. And in the initial disaster and emergency and in the aftermath for well testing, the mark was about 2 miles for the highest exposure, for potential exposure to well water contamination, and initially for potential exposure to an explosion they feared happening. So you can measure out here and get a sense, where that could impact, so that gives you, it's how you can use the measurement tool to get an idea of where you need to focus your attention. All right, I'm going to clear that. And so again, knowing the distances is one piece of data amongst many others to help determine the areas and population that face the highest level of threat as a result of the incident. But as a note of transparency, although our division did use this map to distinguish areas served by public water systems versus areas relying on private water wells, and to determine the waterways that were most likely impacted by the release of chemicals, our map was not used widely in the response, since many of our partners, including the DEP, had access to a wider range of spatial data through special federal resources, such as the Interagency Modeling and Atmospheric Assessment Center, or IMAC. However, we feel that this is a great resource for emergency responders and local communities who may not have access to these types of resources, as this is free and available on our webpage. All right, so that wraps up that use case. If you bear with me, I'm going to turn off the layers here. We'll zoom back out to the extent of Pennsylvania. And now we're going to move into what is called our Near Me tool. It's available up here, far right corner. And so this tool's purpose is designed to help individuals who are interested in learning about environmental indicators that may be near their home, place of work, or their child's school, or for you as municipal officials, really to compare, to look at any location of interest within your municipality and compare it to any of these indicators. And so for this demonstration, we're going to turn on a few layers. We're going to start with our environmental justice areas, waste processing facilities. So I have to pick those out here. Right here, historically abandoned landfills and waste incinerators and resource recovery facilities. They're basically the same thing. Hazardous sites, cleanup act sites, air emissions plants, which is another data set from DEP. And we're going to use our low income indicator from the American Community Survey. And so now that these indicators are turned on, I'm going to switch again to Legend View so that you can see their corresponding symbology more clearly. And I will click on the Near Me tool to enable its capability. And so I'll turn this on. And when you click that, you will have this box that pops open, and you can search for an address or place. So I'm going to search for the Lewis Elkin Elementary School, and this is in a low-income neighborhood in Philadelphia. So I'm going to hit enter, and it'll zoom you in here. And just to make this easier to see, I'm going to close this box. You'll see the pin still stuck there. And so the Near Me tool provides the ability to find features within a buffer ranging from 0 to 20 miles of a defined address or place. You can also select the My Location button here if you want to let the internet determine the location of your IP address and zoom in on it. The tool also allows you to drag this slide up or down as low as 1 mile or up to as high as 20 miles, depending on what distance best suits your needs. But we have it preset to return results at a distance of 2 miles. And this tool also allows you to quickly view the number of features for each indicator within the buffer. I do just want to note that in our current version of the map, for you to get results in this tool, you have to have selected the layer from the indicator list. If you don't have it turned on, it won't pop up in this tool. So that's important to note. So starting from the bottom here, we can see that there are 52 environmental justice areas. And so now that I've kind of pointed them out, since they cause the map to appear so dark and obscure the other data, I'm going to briefly turn them off. So I'm going to jump back over here, scroll down and turn those layers off. So now we can see a little more clearly. Come back over to the Legend View. And moving up from there, we can see that there are 4 waste processing facilities. There are 6 historically abandoned landfills, 5 waste incinerators, 1 hazardous sites cleanup act site, 12 air emissions plants, and you'll see it says 58 low income. Now, I want to make a note here. Because this layer, that's the name of the layer, and it's mapping census tracts, they're not all, as you can see looking at the symbology, they're not all in the highest quartile, what we would call low income. So this is a little thing you have to be aware of. This is actually saying there's 58 census tract. You'll need to look at the symbology to see whether it is low income or not. Just a note there. And so I will, so if we turn back to the right here, you can also click on the arrow next to any of these listed indicators. And for this example, we'll choose air emissions plants. You can expand it to see the name of and distance to each individual feature within the buffer. And so you're also able to click on anyone. And so for this example, we'll choose Perlite Inc. And then it will highlight it in blue on the map and allow you to see all the data contained within the attribute table of the specific feature you select. So in this case, again, this is data from the DEP. We can see that this is Perlite Corp. We can see their NAICS code. We can see their description, plastics, material, and resin manufacturing. And you're also able to see we've appended the air emissions data that they reported to DEP in tons per year. So you're able to go down through and see what they're emitting. All right, so that's a pretty deep dive on what you can use this tool for, but kind of to show how it's really unique, especially if you're interested in looking at different areas, different sites within your municipalities. Now we're going to, for a little juxtaposition, we're going to search for a school that is in a high-income neighborhood in Philly. And so if I'm going to go back, so we were comparing apples to apples, I'm going to turn the environmental justice areas back on. And now we're going to search for the Springside Chestnut Hill Academy on Willow Grove Avenue. All right, I'll turn that box off. So I'm sure you're able to see the difference pretty quickly. So we'll go down through here. There are 3 air emissions plants as opposed to 12. There are no HASCA sites as opposed to 1. There are no waste incinerators as opposed to 5. There are 6 historically abandoned landfills, which is actually the same in both areas. There are no waste processing facilities as opposed to 4, and there are 19 EJ areas as opposed to 52. And so, although each case is going to be unique, we think this is a good example of how you can use the Near Me tool to compare different areas within your individual municipalities, as well as different areas throughout Pennsylvania. And so that concludes the demo of our Near Me tool. I'll turn these layers off. Bear with me. And we'll zoom back out. And so the last demo we have here is our swipe tool. So we will zoom into Pittsburgh, Allegheny County. And to demonstrate this tool, I'm going to turn on the following indicators. We're going to turn on the historic homeowners loan corporation redlining areas. We will use again air emissions plants. And now we're going to turn on our people of color indicator from American Community Survey. And again, now that they're turned on, I'll switch over here to the legend view so you can more clearly see their symbology. And I'll click on the swipe tool to enable its capability. And so this tool's purpose is to provide the ability to easily compare the content of different layers by dragging the tool left or right to reveal different indicator layers beneath, kind of like peeling an onion. As I swipe the people of color layer, you can see the historic redlining layer below it. This tool allows you to see how the areas in darkest blue of the people of color indicator, representing census tracts with the highest percentages of people of color in the most recent American Community Survey, closely mirror the areas in darkest red of the historic redlining areas indicator, which represent the lowest neighborhood grade assigned by the Homeowners Loan Corporation in the 1930s. And so, as I think you can notice as well, the air emissions plants follow a very similar pattern. And so you can utilize the swipe tool to compare any layers, but we think this is a good example of how you can utilize the swipe tool to compare a historical policy to see how that policy may be currently impacting current populations. So that concludes our presentation. We'd like to thank you for your time, and we're more than happy to answer any questions you may have or demo any specific examples you'd like to see.
All right, I see the question in the chat about how often the data is updated. So we published this map in May of 2022, and we're looking to add additional layers and publish the new map sometime this year. We unfortunately may be losing quite a bit of our funding going forward. So I can't really speak to how often this data is going to be updated, but it will be, if it is updated on, every other year or every third year, then it is going to be somewhat lagged.
We also have, so I can share my camera again. So we also have a delay in creating our newest version is we've been working to create off of the Near Me tool. We've been working to create a custom report, a custom widget is what it's called, so that folks can, because it's pretty, I think it's pretty easy to work with, but you have to currently turn on layers to get them to populate in the report. And then again, like you'd have to like somehow save it or maybe take screenshots. So we wanted something that could give folks something printable that they could reference. And so we've been working with an outside vendor to create that specific custom tool for our map that doesn't exist in anybody else's map. And then you won't have to turn on any layers. We're getting close to the end of that. So basically you just have to get in and open the tool and put your address in or an address you're interested in, and it would create a report for you. And our design, kind of spearheaded by Stephanie, is to not just tell you like what's near you, but also give you an overview of your community, or whatever address you search, the community of that near that address. If it is at risk of flooding, if it's low income, and using a lot more data sets that we will be adding, like if it's in a primary care shortage area, stuff like that, to try to get at community vulnerability.
I tried to answer your question, Lisa, in the chat. So if you click on the boxes next to the name of the layer, then it should turn that feature on for you.
And one other,
I can't see any of that. I mean, I can see it in the chat box, but I can't see any of that on the screen. But thank you. I'll see what I can do. But it's very frustrating because I'm so impressed with what you're doing and I can't see any way to use it. So I'll have to work that out on my own. I'm not, I sort of learn by seeing. So thank you.
Ethan, what were you going to say?
well, I would just like to add to her comment that it might be something, maybe even like restarting your computer after this is over. You might be able to open that up, but certainly if they provide our contact information, if you are having difficulty, you could feel free to reach out to us. I was also just going to add that, so another thing, so we mentioned there's other layers. So currently our map version has 61 indicators, and our next version right now is slated to have 89. So quite a substantial increase, and we're adding, so Stephanie worked to add vital statistics layers. We have another colleague that worked to add climate change indicator layers. So there's a lot more data included. And again, I mentioned some like primary care shortage areas. So there's a bunch more that will be available. We can't say when, but it is a pretty exciting, will be an exciting update.
Well, does anyone else have any questions? All right. Well, if not, I appreciate everybody joining us today. Um, Thank you very much to the Pennsylvania Department of Health and Stephanie Hassanali and Nate. Very much appreciated. If anybody has any questions, I'm sure they would be happy to answer them on the side or help you out. But this video and information will be coming in an email, and it will also be on our website under the member portal. So thank you all. I hope you have a great weekend. Thank you again to the Pennsylvania Department of Health for a wonderful session.